Her name was Renee Nicole Good. Say her name. She was a whole ass white woman that was just, if what her mother said is true about today's events, she was just driving down the road when she saw that ICE was harassing one of her neighbors. She stopped to observe, which she's legally allowed to, and they took her life because they know that they could get away with it. Renee Nicole Good. Say that white woman's name out loud. And yes, it's important that she's a white woman. It's important because they can't spin it and say that she's smoking weed or had fentanyl. You understand? They're gonna have to just straight up fucking say ICE can execute people. This, we are not mad enough. We are not fucking mad enough.
I want y'all to be so fucking for real. Like I said before, rest in peace to Renee Good. What happened to her should have not happened. And yes, I should pay for what they did. But I want y'all to be fucking for real. I'm not shocked. I'm not outraged. Because this has been happening to my community ever since we came out of fucking shackles. It is now finally spilled over into the white community. White people are now being put in the same position as black folks and people of color. Y'all are finally starting to get a little bit of maybe a percentage of what it feels like for your rights to be infringed on, for people who don't give a fuck about you. America has always been racist. They've always punched down of people of color and black people. Hell, 100 years ago at the fucking Capitol, the KKK had a nice ass march with 30,000 KKK members because they felt like white folks weren't on top in this country. Now we got a new Grand Wizard. His name is Wigs R Us. And his Grand Dragon is Stephen Miller. His Grand Titan is Pete Hegseth and Christy Nome. His Grand Cluckster, which is a recruiter, is Cash Patel. And ICE is the recruitment. I think this year is the awakening of white people finally understanding what black people and people of color have been saying for decades in this country. The KKK never stopped existing. They started off as people who ran and hunted down slaves reaching for freedom, trying to get out of shackles. Then they got hoods. Then they became police officers. Some of them trickled down into the government and ran for senator, governor, or representative of a state. Some of them fled into the FBI, the CIA. Hell, you could practically say they living in the White House right now. I think a lot of y'all have forgot this part of history. That if you were a white person and you supported black people having equal rights back then, black people being free, black people having a voice, black people being able to vote, black people getting equal pay, you were clipped as well. Yes, they took you out. I think that's starting to come back around again. And Renee is a prime example of somebody unbeknownstly standing between racism and hate and being seen as a threat because of who she sided with. I want black people to be more angry than what we are. Baby, this is our life. This is nothing new. It's just that now racism has finally poured into the white community. Nobody's safe now.
People are actually surprised about what happened in Minnesota. Understand, as a black man, that didn't shock me at all. ICE agents taking the life of somebody should not have shocked you at all. Now, what did shock me is the fact that they took the life of a white woman. That caught me on the edge. And rest in peace to Renee, because nobody deserves that. But understand that we are at a point politically that if you are in opposition of what they are doing, they are willing to take your life. People, you have to understand, these are frustrated white men. Now, I know they tell us in America that history is not that important and let it go. Understand, if you start to study history, then you'll start to realize that this has been a thing for hundreds of years. And I know a lot of people think that white supremacy just benefits all white people, but no, it just benefits the white power structure. Actually, it has hurt a lot of poor, impoverished white people. But people just have been comfortable with black and brown people getting their heads knocked in for the last few years that they have not just paid attention to.
Hello guys, welcome back once again to the channel. Now, unfortunately, white folks in America are realizing they are also not safe. They are realizing they are also in danger. They are realizing that their white is not helping them. And this is after a tragic incident that happened in Minneapolis, Minnesota the other day, after a white woman was tragically shot by an ICE agent. Why are we saying a white woman? You know, for the longest time, these things that happened to that white woman has been happening within the black community until black people decided enough is enough. It's our time to fight and it's our time to leave an impact behind. That is where they came up with the Black Lives Matters movement after what happened to George Floyd in 2020. So black people seeing this is nothing new. They already know how it feels happening to them. They already know what really happens. And for the white folks to experience this, it's a wake-up call for them. The white people, they thought that, black people are the endangered species. But right now, they are waking up to realize, wait a minute. Just as the black people, we are white, but we are not safe. Without further ado, let's watch these videos, what the black people had to tell these white folks. Then we shall be sharing a comment about it.
Baby, somebody got on this app and said their grief needs to catch up with ours. And baby, I concur. First, let me be very clear. My condolences go out to that lady and her family.
They are already trying to spin this as an action of self-defense. Having seen the video of myself, I want to tell everybody directly, that is bullshit. This was an agent recklessly using power that resulted in somebody dying.
She was murdered, and black folks know exactly what that feels like. But what's hidden different for me is the grief I'm seeing from white people. Because when we lose someone, we don't get to just grieve. Baby, we get interrogated. What did they do? Were they on drugs? Were they a criminal? It must be more to the story. I blame the parents, as if anyone deserves to be murdered. But baby, when this happened, black folks did what we always do. In a variety of ways, we communicated. Baby, this is wrong. Full stop. No digging, no character assassination, no trying to justify the death. But baby, we don't get that grace. Because if we're real honest, white America has never had to fully reconcile what their ancestors did, how guilt gets projected, how black folks are treated guilty until proven innocent, and sometimes not even then, and how black folks are denied empathy even in death. So I want to be clear that I'm not celebrating anyone's pain, but what I am saying is this. Their grief is finally touching something that we felt for generations. And all I can say is, their grief needs to catch up with our grief. All right, y'all.
White folks really ain't mad enough for me because how they kill a white woman in cold blood? They kill one of y'all's in cold blood. And y'all out there protesting, throwing snowballs at them. Snowballs? Ain't nobody pick up a brick, pick up a stone, a pipe, nothing? Snowballs? The truth is y'all expect black people to do that heavy lifting when it comes to fighting. That has always been a trend when it comes to protesting. But black folks are sitting it out. The change is up to y'all. Y'all want change in America? You guys are the majority population. You got to bring change. Just like white people got Trump elected and they brought in all of this craziness, y'all have to start to undo this now. And that's the point where they're killing white folks. So that means that race stuff, none of that matters. It's all out the window. But you can see that people have really been comfortable with reaping the benefits of white supremacy and letting other people suffer in America while they sit back and watch.
But I wanted to do this video because I have some more thoughts on this Renee Nicole Good situation. White people now have their George Floyd moment, ironically enough, originating from the same city and state. In my view, a George Floyd moment follows a string of atrocities. George Floyd was not the first person to be brutalized or even unalived by cops. And Renee Nicole Good wasn't either. 32 people have perished in the custody of the frozen rejects. In 2025, 14 times the frozen rejects have fired their weapon onto residents. 4 of those times they unalived someone. But Renee Nicole Good hits different, doesn't it? The same way that George Floyd hit different with the black community, who had seen a string of unalivings of black and brown people before George Floyd. Those unalivings, just like the unalivings that have been done by the frozen rejects, were not any less important than George Floyd or Renee Nicole Good. But they were the breaking point of the population that says enough is enough. After tensions had built for months and years, witnessing the same things over and over again. And that unaliving, the unaliving of George Floyd, the unaliving of Renee Nicole Good, those unalivings witnessed in public, caught on tape, where law enforcement is obviously in the wrong, with an overwhelming amount of footage to prove their wrongdoing, it hits differently. This is the moment that citizens realized one of two things. One, that it can literally happen to anybody. George Floyd didn't wake up that morning and think that his end was going to come that way. Renee Nicole Good did not wake up that morning and think that her end was going to come the way that it did. Both of them at the hands of people who claim to be keeping American streets safe. People start to realize, looking at those situations, that it could very well be them or someone that they know. And then they start to realize something else, that things will not change unless there is a demand for that change. Throughout the entirety of American history, there have been no changes in this country for the better until massive demonstrations and demands for that change. There have also never been change in this country for the better without someone giving their lives for that cause. It is quite unfortunate that that has to be the pattern of change for good in this country, the so-called greatest country in the world. In both of these cases, the government was quick to demonize the victims. With George Floyd, because of the image that they have put in people's mind about Black men, that job was easy. It was easy for them to justify his unaliving, despite the videos, despite him being a father. But with Renee Nicole Good, it's a little bit harder to demonize a white woman in America. Not this way. So the efforts of the likes of Bone Spurs, the couch-friendly VP, and the puppy Grim Reaper are falling on deaf ears when they try to call her a domestic terrorist and to try to say that she tried to use her car to harm that frozen reject. They are not able to do with her what they have been doing with the Black community this entire time. For decades and decades, they have been using these tactics to try to demonize the Black community. So when they take our lives, the lives of our husbands, the lives of our sons, the lives of our daughters and our mothers and our fathers, they seem justified because they have already demonized all of us as being criminal and less than human. It is an experience that we tried to tell everyone about in 2020 with the George Floyd protests, and it is an experience that we tried to warn people about in 2024. They are trying to use that exact same playbook here because they know that they were in the wrong, but they got the wrong demographic. And now people are starting to understand what Black people have been trying to tell them for so long. People are now understanding that yes, it can happen to you. No, you are not safe in this regime. But now we're not talking about police precincts, not talking about individual officers. Now we're talking about the White House. We're talking about the FBI and the DOJ, the people who are supposed to be on the right side of history, the people who are supposed to actually care about these things. They are now the ones causing the problems. And they have become so emboldened that they do not care to demonize a 37-year-old writer and mother of 3, and by her own words, shitty guitar enthusiast, to make their base believe that that unaliving was justified. They do not care who you are, because if you're not with them, you are against them. And this regime does not care what it has to do. The FBI is already obstructing justice in this case, as they have taken over sole control of this investigation and has said that they will not be doing a joint investigation with the Minnesota law enforcement, and have told the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehensions that they will not be allowed to get the evidence that they are looking for in order to do their own investigation. They are stonewalling and blocking that evidence from the crime scene. And the puppy Grim Reaper is trying to say that the state of Minnesota has no jurisdiction in this case, which is not at all true. If this case ever goes to trial, it will be a state prosecuted case. So the state needs to do an investigation. The state needs to put together the grand jury. It needs to be the Minnesota grand jury that actually does an investigation and moves to indict the frozen reject, which we do have his name now. Jonathan Ross is that frozen reject's name. Supposedly, he is an experienced officer. Well, we can probably guess what kind of officer he was and why he's no longer doing that job. But that's speculation only. But I digress. So if the FBI is moving to take over the investigation because they don't want the state to be able to do their own investigation so that they can put together a grand jury and indict Jonathan Ross, that is an obstruction of justice, because we all know that they're not going to do a fair and balanced investigation of their own, especially when the puppy Grim Reaper already said that this was self-defense and Renee Nicole Good was a domestic terrorist. Bone Spurs, before actually watching the video, said that that was self-defense. And now, after watching the video, he just says that's a sad situation, but is not actually calling for any type of justice or investigation. And the couch-friendly VP is leaning into the idea that Renee Nicole Good tried to hit the frozen reject with her car, which did not happen, as can be clearly seen on the video. But he's going to lean into it because they can just lie with impunity, and their base, who does absolutely no research at all, will believe them. And even if they see the tape, it only takes somebody that they agree with telling them what to think about that tape, and the occulta personality will come through. And they will believe that the yellow liquid coming down on their face is actually rain. This whole thing is disgraceful and deplorable. And as some have seen already, I have zero tolerance for justifications for this in my comment section. Just be warned, I am out of patience for ignorance. But I really think that this is the white people's George Floyd moment. And we'll just have to see what they plan to do with it.
They don't want nobody to know that she's white. They don't want nobody to know that she's white. Renee Nicole Good, the 37-year-old woman that ICE agent blew her face off in broad daylight after she had just dropped off her 6-year-old child, her 6-year-old boy to school, is white, and they don't want you to know that. They don't want you to know that because it's going to fuck with their narrative. A ICE agent took his firearm, aimed it into the car of a white woman, and blew her face off. Blew her face off. But everywhere that you read, all the media that's reporting it, they keep saying 37-year-old woman, 37-year-old woman. They refuse to say her name. They refuse to show her picture because they don't want you to know that she's white. They don't want you to know that she's white. ICE murdered a white woman, blonde, blue-eyed white woman, shot her in the face 3 times. They don't want you to know that. And they are purposely not letting you know that it's a white woman whose face they blew off because they don't want you to switch sides. They do not want you to switch sides. They don't want you to work collectively with the oppressed after realizing you too are being oppressed. They don't want you to switch sides. That's why they're not letting you know that it was a white woman. It's a white woman. A white woman. I'm going to keep saying that over and over and over and over and over. It's a white woman, blonde hair, blue eyes. They blew her face off. And the government is currently trying to justify it. The government is currently trying to justify it. They're lying to your face because we all seen the videos. This man is walking around free after taking his firearm and aiming it into the car of a civilian, unarmed civilian, and blew her face off. And it's one of your very own. She had also lost her husband. So now her children are parentless. Where is all the pro-life extreme right? Where are you guys? Where are you? Huh? Now that you know it was a white woman that they murdered, not a criminal, not a migrant, not a black person, a white American woman got her face blown off with the help of your tax-paying dollars.
First of all, this situation with this ICE agent, I'm not even going to say rogue because this is very much who they are. Is very tragic, and my heart goes out to her family. I wanted to say this because I feel like I just had a light bulb moment, and I'm going to figure out how to articulate this. But I feel like this was almost like a ritual because we are now, everything that they did, that they initiated during the George Floyd era, they've come back to get in blood. Okay, so all these layoffs, all these 300 plus thousands of black women that have been laid off, all of these unemployed individuals who are looking for a job, black people online saying that they've had to select or deselect certain boxes in order to get an opportunity. It's all intentional and very systematic. And so here it is, where they've rolled back on DEI. They've done away with that, and they had a strategic plan to do so. So they've taken and stripped DEI away. They've taken jobs away that created diversity and equity in corporate, predominantly white spaces. And now, where there was consequence for the murder of George Floyd and what occurred, what was that, 5 or so years ago? Now, in the same place, they do the same thing, but in a different climate. We know something's in the water, but something's real funky. Okay? Something's real funky. Are you picking up what I'm putting down? I think it's intentional that there's such a strong ICE presence there beyond just obvious reasons. And I think, however they manage around this is going to also be equally intentional. And I'm going to say this, that this incident is going to spark the next George Floyd like circumstance, and all of the backlash that came out of that. This one right here, I think, is going to ignite destruction. This one is going to not ignite a shift in this cycle that we're in under this administration. I'm not sure how to articulate it, but I think this is going to be what that was for that time period. I guess what I'm trying to say is that they're making us pay for every single accommodation that was given to us in 2020 and during that time period, during the last 5 years. They are making us pay for every single thing, and they are getting it back in blood. Blood, jobs, money, livelihood.
Black people, they of course they are in solidarity and they are condemning what happened to Renee Nicole Good. But also they are using this opportunity to remind the white people that you are white, but you are not safe. You guys thought that black people were the only people in danger, were the only race in danger. But this has happened, and the one who has committed this is your fellow white man doing the things he did to a white woman. So you are not safe. And this is now your George Floyd moment. You know, for the longest time, black people have been experiencing this. Yeah, they've been going through this violence. And when such incident happens, well, the authorities, they won't do any investigation because color. They will say, okay, who was he? They identify the name, they write down, and then they'll just come up with a petty excuse. Like, he was under the influence. That man was, we've done multiple diggings and we've just realized he was wanted back in the days. He was a fugitive or a criminal on the run. I mean, they will racial profile that person to an extent. He fits into their narrative. They know very well that he isn't the things that they are saying, or black folks aren't the narratives they are trying to put. But because their mentality, because they are white, they always sell this narrative that a black person is always guilty until proven innocent. Until when black people decided, you know what, enough is enough. You guys, you've gone too far with this. When that happened to George Floyd, what did the black people do? They stood up and said, our lives matters too. And not just Black Lives Matters. They condemned the act of unaliving of people in America. Right now, white people are also experiencing this. They are realizing that the things that has been happening to black people was so absurd. The grief and the pain black people have been experiencing, we are now experiencing because our own are doing the same to our own, but not black people. So black people are not just trying to criticize or say we don't care. No, they are mourning too. They are in solidarity, but they are just reminding these people that you have your own George Floyd moment, and whatever you want to do with it is upon you. You should also remember, unless there is will to change, there will be no change. And change will only occur if you people stand and also say and accept that you are white in your white country and you are not safe in your white country because your fellow white men are doing the things that they are doing to you. That's the point of the day. Subscribe and see you in the next.